Welcome to the Pitching Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Flutie Davis, and today we have a pretty complex topic, something that's always changing, and that is healthcare, specifically the financial sides of healthcare, and looking more towards physicians and helping them build autonomy, looking at the employment status, whether that's private practice or going to directly to a hospital, and then private equity in the MSK space. Is there a need for it? Is there a role for it? And we're so lucky today. Our guest is an absolute legend in the MSK space at the forefront of helping physicians build autonomy. Marty Nichols, the COO and co-founder of Physicians First Bancorp. Marty, welcome to the pod.
Well, that's very kind of you, and I hope I can live up to the nice intro. I'm really excited about this. As you know, I'm here at AUKUS, and it would have been great to get together, but with you under 2 foot of snow, we'll have to do this
Yeah,
today, and maybe next time we can do it sitting together.
we'd love to do that. We'll do it live at AUKUS. So if AUKUS is listening to this, let us know. We're happy to do something there. So Marty, you have an amazing background that our viewers really need to hear about. And we'd love to know a little bit about how you started in this industry. And then really what was that moment that you decided I need to do something to help change it for the better, because this is an ever changing industry. And, just in my 12, 13 years, I've seen it. It's not even the same nearly when I started. So love to hear where you started, how you came to be, and then, that aha moment that this is what you want to do now.
Yeah, no, that's very good because my background was I was actually in the construction business, and I was building buildings and shopping centers, and my younger brother wanted to get into medical device, and I told him, man, I don't like blood, I don't like needles, but that's good for you, and he really
Yeah.
struggled to get in, and he finally got into it and whatnot, and then he and his distributor started reaching out to me going, man, you need to get in, and I said, no, I really don't like that. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and they finally talked me into going in with a local guy in Dallas, and I got to spend 2 days. This is back in the old day when you could just go into the OR, So the distributor took me into an operating room, and they wheeled back then. We only did these procedures on really elderly patients, and this frail little 83-year-old lady gets wheeled into the OR. And we did this total hip on them. They made the incision. I thought, okay, this isn't too bad. The blood's controlled, this is stuff. And then they cut off that femoral head. And I thought, man, this is that's a saw. I know how to use a saw. That's pretty cool.
It's construction.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. And then they pulled out that hammer and pounded that brooch down that femur, and then pounded. This was back with the fully corded AML stems. And I watched pound it and I thought, oh my gosh, what did we just do, to this lady, whatnot. And the next day, I got to follow the doctor up onto the floor. I was with him. I said, hey, can I go? You're going to see the patient? He said, yeah. I said, are you going to go see that lady again? I said, can I go with you? He goes, you want to go up to the floor? I said, yeah. And I fully expected when we walked into there, she was going to throw the vase or something off the deal at us, and be mad. And we walk in and he starts talking to her, and she's happy, with this stuff. And I couldn't help myself. I finally said, ma'am, I can't help but ask you, you don't hurt? And she looked at me. I remember this, this was 37 years ago. And she looks up and she said, oh, yeah, I hurt, but it's a much better pain. And that was kind of an aha moment that put me in orthopedics. Said, oh, my gosh, if what we just put you through makes you feel better, what a great procedure this really is. And it was kind of glorified carpentry. So I got involved in it, and what's taken me to my journey to where I am today with the financial institution, what I'm hoping to address and solve with some of this is I've been blessed to make a very good living off of physicians all of my career. Did I work really hard and did I become very good at what I did? Yes, but without the physician allowing me to be in the room and to help them take care of their patients and stuff, none of this would have happened. And throughout my entire career, what I watched as we took these physicians that made their craft better, that the technologies and stuff got better because of things that they did. Every year we tended to cut their reimbursement. And my job kind of started to become, how can I make that physician more efficient so that they can see 3 or 4 more patients a day, in clinic? How can they do 2 or 3 more procedures a year just to maintain, a level of income? And I took that very seriously. You start to get very good at that until one day you have a moment and you realize there's only so many hours in the day. So this concept of a cut in their reimbursements, an increase in their overheads, the efficiency at some point was going to have to end. And because I was blessed and whatnot, I got to the end, towards the end of that career, and I was given an opportunity with my partner, who's an orthopedic surgeon that shared a lot of these goals, to possibly give something back. So what's taken us on the journey with Physicians First, and I think it's very similar. What's interesting is you're the next generation, and I'm glad to see the entrepreneurship in some of that next generation, because I think it's been taken away. I think some of these reps are starting to look at this just as a job instead of a calling. And now looking at this, being able to say, look, the goal behind what we're trying to do with the financial institution and the bank and the physician self-investing, are we looking to make some money? Yes, everybody and everything in business is about making money. What I think makes us unique is we're looking to make money with physicians rather than off of physicians. And our goal in it is, what I really hope is, I would like to try to maybe reverse a little bit of that trend. If you're a physician and you get a buzz and what excites you is doing 1,000 procedures a year and chasing the efficiency and working hard, and there's some of them, Dr. Charles DeCook is just amazing what he's done, with his 12 by 12 and stuff when you get his passion. That's great. If your passion isn't that, if you feel that you need to spend 5 more minutes with the patient, or to do 2 or 3 less procedures, what I hope to do is bring them into an entity that brings physicians together and allows them to make some revenue for doing something that they would do anyway, and then gives them the choice and the opportunity to decide, do I want to use this as a tool to become more efficient and do more, or do I want to use this as a tool to slow down and do a little bit better quality to spend more time with each one of those patients? And if you don't mind, I hope I'm not jumping ahead or taking too much. We
No.
talk so much about burnout, right? How
Yeah.
many times in your career, right? And
Yeah.
with what you're doing now, burnout is one of the hot topics, right? And
It's
what
wild.
what's
It's
that?
yeah. It's wild. I mean, I could think about it. You think about it every day. You think
Sure.
about, especially when you're in the OR. They're long days, and as a rep, you get burnt out with all the no's that you get. Also trying to build your business, but as a doctor, I can only imagine as well. You aren't really always at control of your schedule, so it's challenging. So yeah, I could go on, keep going on burnout.
No, I
It's
mean,
a hot
so part of
topic.
one of the things that I found fascinating when I met you was you saw this a lot earlier in your career than I did. And I kind of got the sense when you and I first met, I mean, you were very good at what you did. You were working with 2 of the top tier companies, in the United States, and very good. But even you were kind of experiencing that burnout. You didn't feel that you could make the impact on the industry that you wanted to in the role you were. So you took an entrepreneur job. You walked away from a career that most people tried all their life just to get to where you were, and you walked away, right, with this. And the thing that I find fascinating about it is as we have this burnout discussion, and one of the touch points you have in common is Dr. Ryan Molly, and he talks a lot about, the suicide rate in the United States right now. If you look at the by professions within the United States, doctors have the highest suicide rate in the United States. And then if you drill into that to a subset, 28%, the highest incidence of subset of doctors is orthopedic surgeons. And 28%, are killing themselves. And the
Yeah.
people that are talking about burnout and fixing burnout are the ones that literally are creating the burnout. In your journey, I'm sure you ran into this as well too. I have yet to meet a physician in 37 years. I have yet to meet the physician that I sit down with for a cup of coffee, for a lunch, for a cocktail or dinner, and they sit down and the first thing that they say is, if I have to see one more patient in clinic, right?
Yeah.
If I have to do one more rotator cuff, right? If I have to do another total knee, I'm going to explode. You never hear that. They all
No.
love that part of it. What you hear when you sit down with them is if I have to go through pre-authorization one more time to get the patient the care I know they need, if I have to do another peer review, with somebody that's never even seen my patient, if I have to log in to one more EMR, right? the very things that are driving the burnout are the things that are taking them away from what they're really trained and what their passion is doing, which is making patients better,
Yeah.
right? So what I'm hoping to do on this journey and whatnot is to address that, to allow people to possibly step away from the burnout and focus their career back on the things that they want to do or that they enjoy doing.
Yeah. It's interesting. The burnout side is very real. And if I look back on the early parts of my career, when I was an associate rep, a rep, the most exciting part about my job was not selling. And sorry for all my old bosses, it was not selling. I didn't enjoy that. It's not something I wanted. What I loved doing was being involved in the patient care process.
Sure.
And that was such a rewarding time doing. You walked out of a case, you knew that you made a difference in someone's life. And that was the most rewarding part of it. And that's something that kept, I know, my team, myself, my mentors going. And you saw the same thing on the physicians. They were so frustrated when you talk about the inefficiencies within the hospital systems, the turnover times. And that was something that really bogged down a lot of people. The business side of it, the trying to make sure that the margins were there. It was a big burnout. And then you look at post COVID era, it's worse. It's so much worse. You go through so much red tape trying to get products approved in the hospital, or how do I just find a way to build autonomy? And that's a really difficult thing right now. And that's what I love about what you're doing. You are focused on building autonomy for physicians and helping them regain a little bit more independence and try to help them get to that next level of financial freedom, which then hopefully turns into building a little bit more efficiencies within their practice. So I'd love to.
No, and to your point on that, the whole point of that is plain and simple this. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you should never be an employed, a hospital employed physician, right? Or you should never be employed, that everybody should be independent. There's no one solution for everybody. There's a role for a hospital employed physician, and there always will be and there always should be. But there's also a role for a private practice insurance, people who want to be practiced. And that's what bothers me, is not saying that one is good or one is bad. What I believe is bad is when you take and put physicians into a position that they don't feel that they can make that choice any longer. I stood in rooms where people asked three simple questions from the podium. How many of you physicians are private practice? And early on, the majority of the hands went up. How many are employed? And a fewer hands went up. But the third was the kicker question. They always followed it with the question, how many of you believe in the next 3 to 5 years that you will have to become employed, a hospital employee, to continue to practice medicine? And overwhelming, the hands went up. There's the problem. When you create an environment in a world where somebody believes that they have to be forced into a certain deal, there's where your burnout and frustration comes in,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
think about your career. Think about when you and I met. One of the things that you said early on when we first met, one of the terms I still use all the time and absolutely love was, you said, the slow no.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did not get it, man. When you said that, I just went, holy cow. And you were talking about your journey from being a rep to being a marketing person within a company. You were on the side of the company that was actually driving that slow no, but you saw it happening. You saw what was happening to people, and it drove you nuts. You wanted to fix that problem.
Yeah. And it's no fault to the company. It's the slow no for anyone that doesn't understand. Look, physicians they're innovators by nature. They want to develop products. They want to develop new ways to fix issues. And the slow no is when a physician engages in a conversation with industry or an agency, whomever, and they just try to use that as an opportunity to build their sales and build the usage of the different products. And they still will wine and dine and take the physician out and try to see what they want to develop. But to no fault of theirs, they just don't have the resources to be able to develop new products. So at that 6-month mark, it's, hey, we love that. Let's think about it, but try to use this other shoulder anchor that we have. And it's frustrating. It frustrated me enough to where that's what I set out to try to fix, and it's been fun. So
Yeah.
you said a few things that are interesting. Kind of going back on the physician employment side, it's what 80% of physicians now are actually employed by a hospital. Is that something that's accurate? And
Well, I think that there's a little bit of a misnomer in that. We hear 80% of the physicians are employed. I don't think that number is actually 80% employed by the hospital. So I think a couple of the other dynamics that's changed in healthcare that's important to look at and understand is that, originally physicians, and all physicians, but especially orthopedic and family practice doctors and even cardiologists and stuff, they tended to be loners. They tended to be independent, one person groups. But especially in the surgical world, what really drove the advent of a group was for the privilege of practicing medicine. A physician would have to take call in the hospital, right? And you'd need to see your round on your patients and stuff during the weekend. So if you look at the original herding of physicians, most of those groups were 4 to 6 people groups. And so you'd end up with these communities and they'd have multiple 4 to 6 people groups. And a lot of what drove that was the burnout from doing too much call. So if you had a 4-person group or a 6-person group, what happened is then you could treat your patients, you could operate, you could see patients, but you only had to take call once a month or once every 6 weeks. And you could leave town, you could go to a medical meeting, you could go on a vacation or whatnot, and know that your patient was being taken care of. So for a long time, we truck along and we have these 4 to 6 man groups, but each one of them's independent in that group. As we've cut their reimbursements and stuff, they've had to consolidate, not because they necessarily want to, and not necessarily because it's providing better care for their patient. Whether you're around once every 6 weeks or once every 14 weeks or 12 weeks, it doesn't matter. Once again, we forced them. They felt the need that they've had to consolidate to these 20 people group, 30 people groups. Now we're seeing 100 people groups, and it's all financially driven, forcing them to do it. So some of those, when we see the employment rate of some of these doctors, if you take some of the larger groups like Ortho Virginia, CAO, Emerge, Ortho Indy, what happens is when they come into that group, they're basically still independent physicians, but there's some tax advantages to being, quote, employed or a W-2 employee. So I don't know what the real mix is of that 80%. There is a large percentage of them that are hospital employed. I think some of that 80% employed mix are people that are employed within their group.
Got it. So it's always interesting. We have to figure out the why. Why do those physicians feel that they had to join either large groups or get away from private practice? And I guess we and I talked a little bit about the questions of what's changing healthcare and why, and from the financial side of it. So in your eyes, what is the kind of that changing force right now in the healthcare side and more on the financial side of it?
Yeah, and it's a scary thing. What's happening is, again, people are now that are driving healthcare from the revenue down instead of the patient up are the ones that seem to have the power. And this is really something frightening to me that people don't pay attention to. If you look at any business, and so many things, there's checks and balances that are put into place that should help maintain, markets, and competition is one of the greatest. And if you look at the relationship between an insurance company and a hospital, the average patient, the average consumer, the average person thinks, well, okay, if I have insurance, they're looking out for my best interest when they sign a contract with the hospital, right? They provide me an in-network list. And so I automatically assume that insurance company has went out and negotiated in my best interest, and they got me the best price with that PBM, with that pharmacy, with that hospital and stuff. And because they're looking out for me, I give them my money, and then they shouldn't want to pay their money. And that's just couldn't be further from the truth. The insurance companies and the hospitals have created a symbiotic relationship where the problem with it is we think that the insurance company wants a lower price, but they don't. The higher the price goes up, both of them raise their deal. And part of it was driven in the Affordable Care Act in 2010 that got put into place. There was a thing got put in there called the MLR, which is the medical loss ratio. And it was how they were supposed to manage. And on paper, it's one of these things in the healthcare industry that on paper looks really good. And the thought process behind it was an insurance company has to spend, the MLR is 85/15. The insurance company has to spend 85% of the premiums that they take in from patients actually providing health care to those patients. They get a profit from the 15%. So what the flaw in this is, on paper, that looks really good. It looks like you're controlling those insurance companies. The flaw in it is the reality that 15% of $100 is less than 15% of $1,000.
Yeah.
So as the insurance company is negotiating a contract with a hospital, if in fact an image procedure goes up to $1,000, they don't care because they get to make 15% of it. And they pass it back on to the consumer through the higher premiums and higher deductibles. So what's happened is we're driving this ship up, but nobody's really been looking at it except for the physician, from the patient perspective. And the physicians are so busy on the hamster wheel of trying to be more efficient that they haven't been able to fight it. And I think that that's one of the dynamics in healthcare that's finally hitting the glass ceiling and stuff that's driving so much of healthcare. And it's hit. We finally allowed these things to get so high, that they can't get higher. And what's happened is now hospitals are starting to go into the insurance business
Oh,
because they
wow.
want both sides of the deal. They can't keep having it go up higher. Insurance companies are trying to get into the hospital business that goes fast, but they also now own the PBM. The whole deal of United Healthcare is United Healthcare, and then they've got a PBM to help us on our journey to make sure we get the best price of the pharmaceuticals. But guess what? Optum PBM is
Yeah.
United Healthcare, right?
Yeah.
And then Optum RX is the actual pharmacy. So now you've got this insurance company that provides you insurance and they make money from that. Then they farm you over to a PBM that they own and they make money on that, which then sends you to their actual pharmacy.
Yeah. So it's
And
just
it's
this
just broke.
circle. Yeah.
It's just broke.
That's interesting. So speaking of other financial trends that are really starting to make their way into, healthcare, mainly, we want to focus on the MSK space, and that's private equity moving into it. And I'd love to
Sure.
hear a little bit more of what your thoughts are, because like in the last decade, you're seeing an influx of private equity investment, specifically into physicians' offices, up 600% in the past decade. So can you discuss a little bit about the driving trend behind that and how that does impact physicians and practices?
Yeah, look, again, you and I have been doing this. I've been doing it longer than you, but interesting enough,
Just
one
a
of the
few
very
years.
first presentations I ever saw 37 years ago was Dr. Harris and Dr. Ng, and they debated press fit versus cemented femurs and hip arthroplasty. And at that same meeting, Hungerford and Insall had a debate of substituting the PCL or sacrifice or ACL or PCL or substituting, the PCL. And here we are 37 years later. When I leave this podcast, I'm going to walk into a meeting and several of the topics are discussing, do we sacrifice the PCL, right? Or do we not? Do we press fit or do we cement? Cement's coming back. There's no one solution. So just like I'm not going to be one of those people who says hospital employment is bad, right? And
Yeah.
private practice good. There's a role for both. There's a role for private equity. I don't know that private equity fits healthcare. And I say that for two reasons. I think there's three things that motivate private equity to come into healthcare. First and foremost, they see an opportunity to make money, right? Or they wouldn't be here. That's what they're all about. They're looking at healthcare from the revenue down. And I think one of the things that's really broken in healthcare is healthcare shouldn't necessarily be a profit center. When somebody shows up at the ER or the hospital, that was supposed to be a safe zone. These are vulnerable people. When somebody's in a car accident on the side of the road and they're hurt, one of their family members is hurt, and an ambulance is supposed to be the safe zone. And PE, that's one of the areas, if you look at what PE has really hurt healthcare is when we separated those ambulances and we made them a profit center, rather than just the tool to get a patient to the hospital. We now have people that are sitting on the side of the road in a very vulnerable position, and they're sitting there going, look, we can get them there. We can get them on an ambulance, and we can get your patient there, your loved one there in an hour. We can get them there in 45 minutes, but, we could have a helicopter on the ground here, and they could be there in 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you've got this patient sitting there thinking, well, I don't know, my loved one's bleeding, they're hurting and stuff. A helicopter's got to be better. They sign a clipboard, and we helicopter a patient in. And Dr. McCary, in his book, The Price We Pay, talks about it. You just quadrupled the cost of that deal. And I think the numbers in his book was 80% of those helicopter rides weren't necessary, right?
Sad. Yeah.
So we put it up, but the challenges, I think, and what's motivating PE, I think there's three things motivating PE to come to healthcare. They see revenue, they see money, in this deal where they're going. The next thing is these doctors are racing towards consolidation, and money's coming down, reimbursements come down, overhead's coming up, and then they make this promise that they can reduce that overhead. They can make you more efficient. And I think that that's one of the real flaws. When I got into this industry, a really big physician did 80 to 110 joints a year. They saw 15 to 20 patients a day. We now have physicians that are seeing 70 patients a day in clinic. We have physicians out there that are doing over 1,000 total joints a year. So PE in an industry where they can come in and actually drive efficiency might be a good thing. I think that the efficiencies in this industry have already been taken, so I'm not sure it's there for them.
Yeah.
And then one of my concerns with the PE is it's somewhat predatory, because as we've consolidated these larger groups, if you now have 30 physicians in a group, you're going to have somewhat of a mix. Some of them are going to be early in their career, some of them are going to be in the middle part of their career, and some of them are going to be late into their career. And I think one of the things that's really driven PE and even some of the hospital employment is one of the unique things about a physician is that you and I can be an entrepreneur, and you can go start PitchSync, right? You can go start Hive, some of the projects that you're working on. You could open up a restaurant or a trucking company, a service deal, something like that. And you can grow your revenue. And let's say that you grow your revenue to $2 million and you've got a good, strong EBITDA on it. At the end of your career, you made money on that journey, right? And this is the difference between being rich and wealthy. Being rich is earned money. It's money that you make along the way, and it's directly tied to your ability to work and your desire to drive and work. But it doesn't transcend your working. Wealth transcends your ability to work. It's generational. It's something you can pass down. Physicians, because of the way the system is structured, are allowed to be rich. And a lot of people think physicians are rich because of how much they're paid, when the reality is physicians are rich because of how hard they work. Their pay is coming down, they're working harder. The challenge that they face as they come to the end of their career, and a good orthopedic physician in MSK and whatnot, it's not uncommon for them to be doing $2 million in billing, which and in our world, that would be $2 million in sales, right? Mm-hmm. And they've got a good EBITDA because they're living a good life, so their EBITDA and stuff isn't good. But they get to the end of their career and there's nothing. A physician can't sell their practice, right? It's not like a business. No other doctor is going to buy it. They look at it and they say, look, Dr. X is 67 years old. Why would I pay him $2 million for his practice or 2X or 3X for his practice when in a few years he's just going to have to quit seeing patients, and for free I can just market myself and I can pick up their patients. So these physicians find themselves at the end of their journey and they've lived a very good life, but they don't have that thing to show for it. So what PE is dangling in front of them is saying, hey, look, we'll come in and we'll create this cash event for you, right? So the physicians, and when I say predatory, part of what's predatory about it is that's what they look for. They look for that group that has several of those physicians at that stage, and those are the ones they really talk to, because those physicians can look at this and say, I've got 3 to 5 years left of my career. I can take this cash event and I can put 100% of that money into my retirement, right? This is a life-changing piece of money for a lot of those physicians if they're 3 to 5 years left. And they can continue to practice on their own terms, something that you and I are trying to help these doctors do. I put this money away, I feel good. I can now slow down, I can see fewer patients, but I can still do what I love, right? Yeah. But the people that are in the middle and the people that are at the beginning of their career and stuff, within 3 to 5 years, with the scrape, the money that the PE takes back, they've literally paid back that cash event. It wasn't as life-changing for them. They had to pay bills. They used it to buy into their surgery center, into the other ancillaries. They used it for their home and whatnot. And they find themselves 5 years later, that money cash event is gone. And they've given up the scrape, a percentage of their practice, and now they feel that they're trapped in the deal. And now you've created the burnout and stuff again. So I don't know, like I said, I don't want to crucify PE as being bad. I think there's industries and places that PE can be very beneficial. I just don't know that it fits in healthcare, and especially MSK or cardiovascular.
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't ramble too much on
No,
you
no,
there.
it's great. We need to learn more about it. And you said something, I'd love just a brief overview of this. So you get, you're a physician later stage. You have a practice of 30 physicians. You have a lot of early and mid stage. And so you get that life-changing, altering, money. But then how does that work from a payback situation for PE? You said a scrape. So can you just explain, a little bit more for the viewers of what that concept looks like and why
Sure,
it may not be the best, and I'll leave that out there for them to identify if it's good or not. But what that may look like for those middle and early stage physicians.
sure. So it's one of the things, again, the journey that drove me to what I'm trying to do with the bank holding company and stuff. And the first time I got to sit through a PE presentation to a group, I was absolutely floored because, again, remember, we're looking from revenue down. So if you sit and you put 30 surgeons together, and let's just say that they're, driving 2 million in gross revenue per physician per year, and those are crazy numbers, but I'm just putting numbers out there. You need something to do. When all of a sudden you sit down and you look at that on a spreadsheet, 30 surgeons at 2 million, a year, you're looking at $200 million,
Yeah.
right, of revenue that floats through. And that's a really big number. What people aren't always factoring into that is 60% of that's going away into their overhead, and there's other stuff. But when all of a sudden you're sitting there and you can work from a pool of money that's 200 million down or 20 million down, 20 million down, and work down. What you can then do is say, what private equity do is says, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give each one of you a cash event, right? And let's say that each one of the physicians is going to stick $1 million into their pocket. Well, when you're sitting there looking at that paper, you're thinking, holy cow, they're offering us, we're a 30-man group, and if each one gets $1 million, we're looking at a $30 million cash event. That's a lot of money, right? For anybody, that's a lot of money. You look at
Yeah.
it and you do it. But what happens is then they take what they call a scrape. They take a percentage of that over. And then what they're hoping to do, what's happening right now is they're saying, look, we're going to be able to make you more efficient. We're going to be able to make, and you're not necessarily you being able to do more surgeries or make you better at your craft. We should be able to save you money in your accounts receivable department. We should be able to save you money in your billable department. We should be able to save you money in all these different deals, which is literally, we're going to take some resources away from you, right? You're going to have to reduce. We're going to combine this, and we're going to reduce some of the resources you have. And that's how then they make their money. And I think one of the flaws in PE would fit healthcare a lot better, and especially MSK, if what they really did was come in and say, look, we're going to stop the bleeding of the 1.8% cut that CMS just announced the other day again. We're going to stop the fact that you're getting reimbursed less. We can come together and we can get you a fairer price for what you're doing. We can raise the revenue that you get. Then private equity might work.
Yeah.
And right now, it's about all this reduction. So then again, what happens is if you start to do the math on this and you look at this, in 5 years' time, if they've taken a scrape, you can pick a number, and I don't, this isn't a hard true number, but if you take 25%, is the scrape for this and stuff, and if you look at the math on what they offered each individual physician and what they paid them, in essence, that scrape has more or less paid the private equity firm back within that 5-year period. So now anything that they make after that starts to become revenue generating for the private equity firm, but it starts to become a negative, and it's a burden on some of these physicians, and that's why they always talk about, well, the second bite. We're going to get you a second bite. We're going to sell this. So again, all the things with private equity is about, we're going to make you more efficient, not necessarily help you provide better care to your patient, right? We're going to make you more efficient. Then we're going to get you a second bite. These are all cool business things. You built your business. You made it profitable. You sold your business. You made money from it. Now you can build another business and you can go. And in business world, that's all really good. But is that really what we want, in healthcare where there's patients and patient lives and stuff involved?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So they're coming in, they're giving a pretty substantial cash event. Then they're saying we're going to help your op expenses. We're going to try to reduce as much of this expense as possible, and
Sure.
that raises revenue. But in time, margins actually come down for the physicians group, but revenues going up for the PE. So it seems, if I'm putting this together, and I'm no expert here, it seems like it's just more beneficial for the physician, sorry, for the private equity group rather than the physician. So why not do both if I'm a private equity group and say, okay, we can come in and help reduce your operating expenses, but also find an opportunity to create some more revenue generating opportunities to enhance the marketing capabilities to put some more programs in place. I mean, wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, and they do some of the marketing and stuff again. But once again, if you're a surgeon and you're doing 1,000 or 800 joints a year, you can market all you want. The problem in healthcare right now for most orthopedic physicians and for most doctors in almost any specialty is not a lack of patients. They can
Yeah,
see patients if they wanted to keep their clinics open till 10 o'clock at night. They could see patients till 10 o'clock at night. If they wanted to operate, the demand for their services isn't the problem that healthcare is facing. It's what they're paid for those services,
yeah,
right? And what's really intriguing that I don't think people are paying attention to is if physicians have been cut in their reimbursement every year for the last 20 years, why are our premiums and why are our deductibles going up every year? Why is the cost of healthcare? If the physician is the one that's providing the care to me and to you, and they're getting less. Why is the cost to me going up? And it's
yeah,
because of we're adding private equity in. We're taking when a physician enters into a contract with a patient. If you look at it from a business, the money that they charge a patient, the profit is their pay, right?
hmm,
So you have a very good relationship because a doctor tells a patient, look, here's what I need to get paid to see you. The patient agrees to pay them. The doctor makes that money and you provided a service. What we've now done with these hospitals that used to be not for profit and true charity hospitals, we've allowed them to become profit centers, just like the PE. And there's a lot of similarities between hospitals and PE. So now what happens is when a hospital based doctor sees a patient, that doctor still has to get paid their fee. But now you also have to pay the hospital. And you have to generate revenue to pay the administration of that hospital. And then what they've done is the hospitals now own the lab. So now the lab has become a separate entity and a separate profit center within that same hospital. So now all of a sudden the lab has admin people and costs, and the lab has to be profitable. And the imaging department is a different department within a hospital. And it
got it.
now is a profit center and it has to become profitable. And the ER department. So we've created all of these profit centers around this thing and whatnot that really aren't necessarily providing better care to these patients, but they all have to be fed. And that's where all the cost is. It's not in the physician.
Yeah, there's just so many. There's too many complexities in the way that we've made the system now. So the system is ripe for change, and I think that's what you and your team at Physicians First Bancorp are doing. But in order to hear about that, you're going to have to tune into part two, everyone. This is a very juicy topic, one that we can go
Have we
for
burned a half
hours.
hour already?
We're already at 38 minutes here,
All
so
right. Wow,
it's
this was
been
fun.
yeah, no, it's been fun. And what we want the listeners to know is this is, again, we're not saying it's bad or good. We want to inform you as much as we can on private equity in the space. And then the next part is fun. That's going to be how do we create revenue generating opportunities? So to plug, I think there's a company pitching that can help that. And then Marty Nichols and his group, they really are, I think are on the forefront of helping these physicians build autonomy and bring back some of that security for themselves. So tune into part two. Marty, thank you so much for being here. This has been a blast.
Yeah, this has been fun. This was one of the fastest 30 minutes I've done in a long time.
Same. I didn't realize until I looked up. So, everyone, please go and follow the Pitch Tank podcast on Spotify and on YouTube, and we'll be posting on LinkedIn. And we've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, everyone.